dove into the work of Randy Green, the Higher Awareness Lifestyle Hall Academy creator, and she is quite a hefty scoop on this banana split of cosmic discovery here. You guys driving in the ditch. So, I've prefaced or talked about in other videos some other mentors in this space. First discovering Black Earth Productions with Seth Esposa about 15 months ago. Through that, finding who Lisa Renee was, the Essential Glossary, coming upon Dr. Jer and Jerry Unfiltered, going back in time 20 years to the work of Ashiana Dean, and someone else I even came upon. He's a guest on some YouTube shows, Rod Hayes. So it's this melting pot of the cosmic piece, which is a very, very large piece of everything that's going on, arguably much larger than what we even perceive, we think we know. And I had done a video over a year ago after I really dipped my toe in the water. This would have been right when the flu was kicking off, and I had read the book Slave Species of the Gods by Michael Tellinger, and then I followed it up and read Gods of Eden by William Bramley. And that's where proverbial you, got introduced to the possibility, the distinct possibility of genetic meddling in the human genome, in the race lineage of humans. And it was definitely unsettling to try to toil with that. I mean, I had already pulled down my paradigm regarding religion, but this is huge. Okay, so that was the first dipping the toe in, and now fast forward to Randy Green's work, where so much of the off-planet, ET, ultra-terrestrial, however you want to kind of bundle that idea, it's just stated as fact, and the work seeks to explain who and what we really are in regards to these non-planetary facts. I'm not sure how to put this. Any of the ideas that pull you out of a religious ideology of what creation is, any idea that pull you out of a scientific dogma that we are evolved from apes, or that we're the only thing here. It's like, no, we're not the only thing. There's a ton of else around us. They've been interacting and meddling with us for a very long time, and our current condition is what it is due to these, what I just keep calling cosmic history, which would be the untold history beyond the 10,000 year history that people generally know and accept, even though that 10,000 year history isn't even accurate itself. It's like, oh, whoa, this is heavy metal here. This is a lot to sink your teeth into. And you get to a certain point, and there's not much left of the reality you think you know left to stand on. You started on a mountain, and here you're trying to pivot on a pinhead, right? And then even when you think you've learned something new in this progression of awakening, as my Pendulum Theory, which I had come up with before I read Bentoff's book, Stalking the Wild Pendulum, or even got introduced to Hermetics, was this idea, this theory of mine. Everything swings back and forth like a pendulum in terms of ideas. Easiest one to to wrap your head around is fashion, right? You think things are out of style, and so many decades later they're back in style, but they're a little different. So in my mind, it's a pendulum on a pendulum, which means it's never actually swinging back to where it was, but it is swinging away from where it is. Well, in this awakening process, which is more just this truth discovery process, you'll learn something and you'll think that's the new thing, and then it ends up not quite being that way, and you kind of have these moments of almost being jealous of the ignorant masses, because at least they're only stuck in one idea instead of having this yo-yo effect of learning something, thinking that's it, and not that you're attaching to it, but when it's new, higher information, you take it as a new possibility, and then you'll see that if a lot of people are talking about it, then it's like, oh, wait a second, this may have hit a threshold of popularity that would suggest that it might not be as true as it is, because, and that's kind of a sub-theory of mine, we'd call it the fallacy of the popular, right? You'll stumble upon something no one knows about it, and suddenly everyone's making a video about it. It's like, are we all discovering this, or is it being intentionally put out there in mass now? And because of that, what's the hidden agenda? And so I'll a litmus test for me is asking yourself, this new information, how much work does it require of me as an individual? And generally speaking, the more work that is required of the individual, the more true and authentic it is, so that you're not just merely passively watching something, you're taking in information, digestion, and then having to act upon it. Coming back to the trivium we've talked about so much. And when something requires action, especially if it's work, difficult, not enjoyable, not pleasurable, but good for the sake of what it is, pleasurable in the idea that you are producing something that is of importance, but it's not necessarily easy and it's not necessarily enjoyable in and of itself, okay, that might be an indication that you're onto something. And of course, some of this information is work in and of itself, and it's running up against your initial various sleep paradigms, so it is hard to take in. Anyway, I digress. I had just listened to another video by Randy Green, and here it was the few things I was holding on to in terms of an understanding, not even out of comfort, but just an understanding of what we are and what our reality is in terms of my basic perception of energies and emotions. Even some of that still has to come down, as she was discussing. I mean, this stuff is so far out there, not in the sense that I can't grasp it, but these ideas being posited are a million miles away from the average Joe going to his 9 to 5. But she was harping a bit on the New Age, but even discussing what our sexual reproduction is in terms of humans, that is sex and bearing a child in the womb, and how this may not actually be our original human genetic, so to speak. And so, I'll back up to the very beginning when I was talking about earlier videos. 2 or 3 videos ago, I talked about the container and how there's a good chance that the majority, if not all, truth that we need to seek lies outside of this container. And I am running up against that here and now. And so much of the outside of the container, again, the container is just the little bit of information that we have, the place where we interact, the average life of anyone here on this planet, their perceptions, pretty much what's been told to them to be true, even though it's not, that represents the container. Limiting box of ideas that we all seem to operate in for thousands, millions of years, whatever it is, whatever we've been told it's been. And overlap that with when I first got introduced to the genetic meddling idea by Tellinger and Bramley. And it turns out like they were onto something, but they were just scratching the surface. And as I dove deeper through the cosmic unfolding history of potentially distorted and manipulated teachings, we have to keep this in mind, that you learn something, hold it against what you know, seek to validate the new information, but the more you get into it, the more you hear everyone else is sharing a distorted piece of it, but it is getting you further away from the absolute falsity and closer nearing a version of the truth that may not even be more comprehensible at the outset, but is a closer representation to the full truth. In here I'd be talking about the cosmic folks, still trying to figure out who's got the most accurate story, where do they overlap, where do they underlap. Well, Randy's talking, there's just this off-the-cuff comment regarding our reproductive capabilities, having to remove myself from the container yet again in order to hold the idea of who and what we are as a race, as a lineage, as humans, and that even the few things I thought to be accurate may even of themselves, in and of themselves, be modified manipulations of our reality. I don't want to ramble anymore because I feel like that's what I'm doing right now, so we're going to tie this up, make this as the timestamp in this journey of mine to highlight the cosmic teachers I've mentioned so far. I'll include links of those folks. I mean, this very high level advanced ideas. It is briefly summarizing some of the journey in regards to other content creators. We can just put a pin in it. Here we are running up against a deeper level paradigm shift of something that we have already worked on in terms of our understanding of who we are genetically speaking as humans. And Randy's continuing to blow the lid off of things here, putting forth more, I wouldn't call them confrontational ideas, just unconventional. And if there's a takeaway here, it's, as I mentioned before, what is so important in this journey of discovery and truth. Seek to align yourself with yourself, whether that's a higher self, inner self, God's self. There is more to you than meets the eye. There's more to you than what is just flesh and bone in this dimension. There's more to you than even your conceived notion of what religion tells you. And therefore there's more to our world and our universe and our cosmos than you understand. But align yourself with that greater part of yourself and line it up with truth and continue to walk towards that. And don't fault yourself, the part of you that you recognize, for having been taught or learned or believed or held on to inaccurate ideas, because then you'll get bogged down in the ego. You'll become upset, you'll be bummed out when you run up against these paradigms. It won't just hurt, it'll become difficult because you won't be wanting to change. You'll want to deny it in order to preserve your identity that has aligned with previous ideas, right? So, just as I'm going through right now, try to find some center point with yourself on all the levels, all the dimensional layers, whatever we're calling your avatar, your rishi, your awakened self, and recognize that there is more going on, and it is more important to learn the truth, continue on the path of discovery, despite the difficulty and how uncomfortable it becomes, because remaining fixated and attached to your old ideas will only gratify the self in this lower dimension, and at the end of the day, you'll already have recognized that that part isn't accurate. You'd just be unwilling to overcome yourself. I'm saying that word a lot. I think you're getting the idea here. Basically, don't be afraid to learn new information. Don't let it shut you down. Because the further you get into this, as uncomfortable as it is, the more you'll come to understand why we're really here and what we need to do. And it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of shit, and these ideas are really fucking wild and far out and hard to stomach, but maybe that is all part of the process. Something to consider. In short, you gotta buckle up, because it's gonna be a bumpy road, but staying asleep at the wheel isn't gonna help you either.